Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. If you could do the usual, the standard practice, which is just let me know, can you see and can you hear and everything's sounding and looking okay, that will be absolutely perfect. Just let me know in the chat section. And then I'll do a couple of welcomes, and I'm going to introduce Kyle over there, and we'll kind of go over a few bits and pieces before we start on tonight's main topics. So if you can let me know if everything sounds okay and looks okay, that would be absolutely phenomenal. So Kyle, the live stream no one asked for and no one wants. That should be in the title, that I should have cut this. Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, so if you could let me know, you can see and hear, mate. Thanks very much, Rich. That's very, very nice of you to let me know. So first of all, before we sort of start everything, if you could do one simple thing, if you've got any questions tonight for either myself or Kyle or both of us, just start your comment in the chat with hashtag Q. That's hashtag Q for question, and then we can use that to easily go ahead and find out who's asking what questions and everything else. So that just makes life a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is just do a couple of welcomes, and then I'm going to introduce Kyle. So anybody that doesn't actually know, which I'm pretty sure there's probably nobody in the audience. I mean, I think even his mother's in the audience, so we'll say no more. Anyway, so who do we have in so far this evening? Good to see you, Rich, as always. Thanks for joining in. Michael Wright, thank you very much for joining as well. Pixter, great to see you back in from last night. Hope you're doing well, and from this morning as well. Kevin, good to see you in. Kyle Van Deusen, or some dodgy sounding looking person, so apparently he's in the audience. Pez Reloaded, good to see you in as well. I66 Info, thank you very much for joining in tonight. Great to see you guys. Who else do we have in? We have Christopher Wells, thank you very much. Jack Daltrey, Dinesh, good to see you in as Max, some guy called WPTuts, wouldn't trust him. Christopher Wells, Andy Von Debussy, always good to see you in as well. So, Adam Lowe, good to see you as well. Let's have a little look. Stratos, pleasure, thanks for joining in. And Carapos, thank you for joining in as well. Joanna, good to see you, thank you very much, from the Orkneys in Scotland. I'm hoping it's kind of warm up there, because it's not very often it does get warm up there, I wouldn't have thought. So, Still Ready, good to see you in as well. Marco, thank you for joining in. And I think that's pretty much what we've got so far. And Mucha Design, Van Halen and Van Deusen, they both rock. I'm assuming that's someone that you know then, Kyle. Okay, Namita, thank you for joining in. Marco, wow, thanks for joining in. Fancy Design. Right, that's enough of the welcomes. Thank you very much. And yes, Pixter, WP22. So tonight I've got a special guest in with me, and we've got Kyle Van Deusen. So I'm just going to bring Kyle in. So good evening, Kyle. How are you doing, young man?
Howdy, I'm excited to be here today. I've been looking forward to this. Anytime I can get on the WPTuts channel, I weasel my way right into it, don't I?
You're always welcome, young man. You're always welcome. So don't ever worry about that.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, fine. I'm taking a day off, so if you want to run the live stream tomorrow, it'll be absolutely spot on. No problem whatsoever. So,
you want to see how quickly you can lose 100,000 subscribers? I'll show you.
Oh, I'm sure they'd still say at least maybe 100. You know, that'll do. There's 100 in there. Yeah, that'll do. So first of all, before we kind of start off with our main topic or topics tonight, would you like to introduce yourself quickly and let everybody know who you are, what you do, and why the hell you're on my live stream, why you sort of hijacked it, and a little bit about yourself. So I'm going to hand this over to you, Kyle, so you could just basically take over my stream while I go to the toilet.
Fair enough. I'd say that why I'm here is just poor judgment on Paul's part. So he asked me, and here I am. But yeah, my name is Kyle. I come from Texas in the United States, if you can't already tell that by my thick Southern accent. I have an agency, Ogal Web Design, that I run by myself. It's a solo agency that I've had for just over 5 years now. And then a couple years ago, I started the Admin Bar, which if you've heard of me, that's where it's probably from. So we got a community of about 5,000 WordPress professionals in there. So we spend a lot of time talking about WordPress and producing a regular newsletter and content and all those kinds of good things. So that is about everything in a nutshell right there.
Awesome. And to be honest, if anybody that's in the audience tonight hasn't gone over and joined up to the Admin Bar over on Facebook, I would highly recommend that you do, because there is a lot of really useful information and a lot of really nice people inside that group. It's one of those groups that there's not that many groups that I actually enjoy being part of and kind of frequent on a regular basis, but the Admin Bar is definitely one of the top ones for me. And I'm kind of in there most days having a little nose. Even if I'm not saying anything, I am Jerry tending to mooch around. And we'll say no more on that front.
So there are a lot of lurkers.
There are a lot of lurkers. So first of all, I just want to quickly say that tonight's topic is not we're going to kind of give you just all the answers, but myself and Kyle have been working freelancing, small agencies, those kinds of things for a good many years now. And I think we've probably picked up a thing or two, and we've looked at how to increase prices, how to increase your profitability, which isn't necessarily the same as increasing prices. And we kind of wanted to have a little chat about those kinds of things, so I can kind of see the kinds of things that you've done, Kyle, how you've increased your bottom line, how you've streamlined your processes, what you've done to basically bring in more income and those kinds of things. Because I think if you are looking to set up an agency or go freelancing, or you're already doing it, times are tough out there at the moment. And I think any way in which we can make more profit and work smarter as opposed to harder, I think it's going to be a good thing for definite. So that's kind of the topics I want to cover tonight. And if anybody's got any questions for myself or Kyle or both of us, or just general questions, just make sure that in the chat you put #Q so we can easily find out those. And then I'll go through, as we go through tonight's live stream, and we'll cover some of those questions, as many as we can in the hour that we've got. And tonight I want to make sure we stick to that hour, because I know Kyle's got plenty of things to be doing and had several meetings today already. So let's not go too crazy. So I think the first thing I'd like to ask, Kyle, is, how long, first of all, have you been a sort of a freelancer stroke agency? How long have you been working for yourself in this kind of industry?
So in 2016, I was really, really sick of my boss and my job and looking for a way out of it. My wife had started her own business, and I kind of got to see all the lifestyle changes she got to go through, making her own schedule, doing what she wanted to do. I was very jealous. So I started looking at ways I might be able to do something similar for myself. I was working in the print industry, and printers are very expensive. Big, large format, $100,000 printer. So I'm like, okay, well, I can't afford that. But what else could I do? And I really didn't know about like freelance graphic designers. Everybody I knew that did this did it, for a company like I did. And I ended up in about mid 2016. A place I did volunteer work for needed some help with their website. And you know how people are. They think you're the computer guy, so you know how to fix everything with computers. So, of course, I could fix their website. But I ended up giving it a shot, seeing if I could help out. And thankfully, it was a Wix website, which made it really easy to get in there and pretend I was a web developer. I had no idea, So I'm like, hey, this isn't that different than running Adobe Illustrator. I could do this, So I started helping them out on the side, and then did a few little websites, for myself, for, just playing around things, and then ended up getting introduced to somebody, and they needed a website, and I think I charged them $300, something like that, and built them a website, and I couldn't believe the money I was robbing from them to make a website and get $300 cash for it. So that kind of started it. And in the beginning of 2017, I actually registered my business. I was still working full time. My goal was within a year to be able to quit my job, but I put in my 2 weeks notice in May of that year, so about 5.5 months later, and then left my job then and haven't looked back since. So I think I just hit my 5-year anniversary last month.
So you're doing pretty well then, seeing as they reckon most businesses, that are going to fail, they'll fail within the first 3 years. If you're 5 months in, you've gone past the sort of like at least the starting line, which is good.
Yeah. I'm going to knock on wood just because you said that out loud, but
me
I
too.
feel like things are going okay at this point.
Which kind of leads me on to, as you just said, the first thing you did was basically you built a website for someone and you charged them X amount of money. And the nice thing there is it's kind of a simple transaction. It's like you give me money, I give you a service, and at the end of it, you get a product of some variety. But setting up in a business is not something that you can survive doing just that, where there's the finite. You do something, the job comes to an end, and that's the end of the transaction between you and that client, customer, whatever you want to kind of call them. So what have you done to increase that potential earning? So like I say, your $300 probably increase tenfold over the years as your skills, your portfolio starts to grow. But even then, there's still that need to kind of have regular income. Because as we know, anything like this where you're service related, it can definitely be a sort of like a feast and famine situation. So what did you do, and how quickly did you kind of go from the point of just building websites and then that was the end of it, to moving on and finding other revenue streams to continue that relationship and generate not necessarily always more income, but more regular income without having to constantly look for new clients?
Yeah, and so I spent like 15 years working for small businesses. It was all in the print industry, but I was working directly for the owner of the business. There was never more than, 5 to 10 of us in the company. So I was, deep in the weeds working in small businesses for a lot of years. And I got to watch some I don't know, some not very intelligent people make some really dumb mistakes over and over and over again. I thought, if I ever do this, I'm going to do things a little bit differently. So just that experience was a huge teacher. If you've worked in a small business, and when you work in a small business, even if your job is just X, everybody kind of has to do their part all around the business to make the business work. It's just how it works in a small company. So I learned a lot about running deposits and accounts payable and all those kinds of things, just when the boss was out or whatever it may be. And then I went back to, when I graduated high school, I didn't go to college, but I went back to college as a almost 30-year-old, and went and studied business. So that definitely helped as well, giving me some kind of idea on the foundational things about running a business, because being good at building websites or graphic design or whatever it may be, and running a business are two different things, right? So in 2017, when I registered my business and wanted to kind of start that process of figuring out how to go out on my own, I wrote a business plan. That's a really fancy way of saying I tried to guess what was going to happen in my business. I'm sure that wouldn't look much of like a real business plan if I looked back at it now, but it gave me a starting point. And I identified a couple of things that I thought were going to be really important for going forward. So the first one was building up some kind of runway in a savings account. So before I could, at this point I had 2 children and a wife and a mortgage and all those things. I couldn't just leave my job and figure it out as I go. Like, I had people counting on my income to survive. So the first thing was building up a runway. So I wanted to, 4 to 6 months worth of our expenses in a savings account that I could rely on. And if I couldn't figure it out in that time, then we're going to have to go back to getting a job. Yeah. So that was the first bit. And then the other bit was, around the same time, my family was really trying to get out of debt and all that. So we were really conscious of all of our expenses. But we figured out, what it takes us to live a month. I wrote down what that number was. I wrote down how much I'm responsible for bringing in, compared to what my wife's bringing in. And I said, okay, well, I have to get recurring revenue up to this number. So I know every month when the month starts, worst case scenario, I don't sell anything new, but we can at least pay our bills and survive, right? So that was really the biggest goal for me, to be able to make the transition from working a full-time job and doing this on the side to being able to do this full-time. So that's always been a huge thing for me, is like, how can I keep my recurring revenue up to where when the month starts, I know at least the bills are paid for, and then everything on top of that is kind of gravy, So, as lifestyles changed, as everything's gotten more expensive, that number's crept up and up and up. And, we bought a nicer house, we had another child, all those kinds of things. That number's grown over time, but we can only grow that number when I can build up my recurring revenue to support that. So things like care plans or SEO services, those kinds of things that you can bill more regularly instead of a website, become so much more valuable in just the sustainability of your business.
Yeah, I think you kind of approached it in a very similar way that I did when I kind of moved over to the freelancing side of things. And what I've always kind of made sure that I've done, to start off with, much the same as yourself, I wanted to make sure that I had at least 6 months of the bills covered. So if you didn't have anything else, I mean, again, same thing, my partner, she was working and still is working, but it's a case of, okay, if 6 months time I can't figure this out, then you look at alternatives, and hopefully over that time you can kind of extend the amount of money you've got in the bank. So it means that in 12 months you may have to go and look for a job. It kind of gives you a bigger buffer zone. And I think that's one of those things that is important when you are looking to move away from a full-time or part-time job, or however you sort of set yourself up, whether your partner's working and they could technically support you for that period of time. It's still good to have that cash in the bank to make sure that when you do start, it takes a lot of the pressure off, where you're not constantly just focused on finding the next client. And that's a comforting sort of situation. And like we said, like you've been saying, that recurring income, when you can get that up to make sure that every single month you've got enough recurring income to come in that you can technically, hopefully, pay yourself that monthly salary and you cover all your overheads, then everything else becomes a lot less stressful. And that's a nice thing to sort of be in. And I think the next thing I sort of like to say, take a look at is what kinds of things have you brought in to be sort of residual and recurring income? I mean, first thing most people think of is your hosting and your domain registrations and things like that. But what have you found to be the best recurring income streams, and how difficult or easy were they to implement and sort of get people onto that that giving you money every single month thing? Because that's not an easy sell when it comes to clients. You know, you've got to give them a solid reason as to why they should be giving you that money, what you're going to do for it. So what kind of things have you found that have worked the best? And, you know, what's your sort of plan with that, or what was your plan, and how have you found that's kind of changed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, as far as bringing in the most money, SEO services have by far been the biggest ticket item for me, because it's not cheap to do SEO for somebody every month. I've also found, though, that SEO services aren't quite as sticky. Depending on your client, they might not understand the work that's involved, how long it takes, have a realistic expectation of the results they're going to get. You start an SEO campaign for a brand new website that didn't exist before. They're not going to be bringing in thousands of leads a month later, right? So I've found, while those are really good for the amount of cash they bring in, they just hadn't been super sticky for me. Maybe I'm bad at SEO services, and maybe that's saying something there, but I just found them not to be as sticky. Whereas care plans, that's the easiest thing to me to sell to customers, especially because you can take what they came to you for, a brand new website, and roll that directly into a care plan. I've come up with plans that are, as affordable as I can make them on the lower end to, higher plans where I feel a little bit more comfortable with the price that's coming in. But for most clients, they understand that, just like your car needs maintenance, your website needs maintenance. And if you don't pay this, if you don't do the maintenance, I shouldn't say if you don't pay this, if you don't do the maintenance, you're going to ruin the website you just invested thousands of dollars in, right? So the option is either do it yourself, and I have a little guide I give them, and I say, here's how you do everything to maintain your website. They usually take one good look at that and think, no, I don't want to do that. Or they can pay me to do it. And, I've had clients, I didn't call them a care plan then, but 5 years ago when I started this business, I said, hey, why don't you just pay me this flat rate every month, and I'll keep everything updated on the website. Those people are still paying me today, 5 years later. And sometimes I go 6, 8, 12 months without hearing from them. Of course, I'm doing things in the back end, but those are pretty sticky services, and they add up quickly, especially as you're growing, building more and more sites. If you can add even half of the new sites you build to your care plan over a few years, it adds up to a pretty significant amount of money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think going back to the SEO to start off with, that is a difficult one because, as you say, there's a long-term plan when it comes to SEO, but the flip side of that is SEO companies have given SEO a bloody bad name. I know I've worked with clients that I've worked with for many, many years, and I don't touch SEO because I just don't like it. It's not something that I'm interested in. I'll advise on the best ways to sort of improve what you're doing, but it's a difficult sell. But I've had people that were paying, £1,000 a month to have SEO services, and the companies say, like, it's going to take at least 12 months before you see anything. So there's £12,000, and if they turn around afterwards and go, you get the excuses rolling out, that's still 12 grand that they've spent on a service that they're getting no return on that investment, which is a tough one. So I've tended to stay away from the SEO side of things for that very reason, that I have no real interest in it because it is a time-consuming thing, especially when backlinks was the big thing, going back a couple of years ago, where everything was about backlinks. And just trying to find places to put backlinks and stuff. No, I've got better things to do with my life than that. But to kind of go back to your care plans, I mean, I'm interested. I know that's one of the things that, with the website owner's manual, which is a purchasable, downloadable PDF and guide to how you can do basically what you've just said, which is contact your clients, give them the information, and they can choose then whether they want to have the sort of care plan moving forward and what is included and all those kinds of things. How did you kind of start off? What kind of money were you charging with your sort of first ones? And you don't have to be specific, but how different is it from where you sort of introduced your first care plan and the amount of work involved in that to where you are now? And how much difference that you kind of found? You sort of like start off with, let's just say, a fee of $200 a month. And have you kind of 10x'd that now? Or is it still something that's kind of, it's on a sliding scale, as it were. I'm kind of just looking to see, kind of get an idea of what could people realistically be charging and what kind of things are included in that service.
Yeah, I think back to the first ones I was doing were probably $20 or $30 a month, and I was happy to get that at the time. Now I couldn't do it for that amount. But even now, my plans are fairly affordable. I mean, everybody can go to my website and see them, so it's not like I shouldn't talk about the numbers, right? I do have, the lowest one is $75 a month. The one I get most people on is $100 a month, and then I have one that's a little bit more expensive for sites that are more mission critical, right? But for me, it's been less about raising the prices on those, though I have inched them up over time. For me, it's been, how do I get all the systems and processes in place to make these as profitable as possible? Because on the best case scenario, the lowest plan I have, almost everything is something I'm doing. I'm not doing one-on-one with a website. I'm doing one-to-many, right? So I'm hooking my websites up to BlogVault. That's what I use to kind of manage my care plans. I'm hooking all the sites up to BlogVault, and from there, I press one button to update all the sites. It automatically backs up all the sites for me every night. It does a malware scan automatically. It doesn't matter if there's one care plan client or 100 care plan clients. It's the same amount of work to me, right? So I honestly don't mind when a customer picks that lowest tier, because it's almost 100% profit at that point, because unless I have to move up to the next tier in BlogVault, I'm adding them into that plan, and I'm not adding any more work to my workload. So for me, it's been really figuring out, and I've gone through all the different, main WP and doing backups manually and this and that, and I've just found where I'm at with the amount of customers I have, it makes sense to play for a more premium service like BlogVault, have all of that in one place taken care of for me, and it's just not a whole lot of work for me. So for me, it's really been, how do I get all those systems and processes in place to make this as profitable as possible? Because at $75 a month, if I literally don't have to do any work, I'll take that,
Yeah,
it's,
absolutely.
It's the same amount of work, whether it's 1 or 100 clients. So
I think that's the kind of the takeaway that people sort of really should pick up on here, is putting the systems in place is the key to making your maintenance plans as low time investment and low effort from your part, and maximizing the profitability. Like you say, if you were charging $75, which is probably around about these days £60 in the UK, and you have something that takes you, let's just say it takes you an hour a day, but you've got 100 clients on it, that's good profit. That's good money, because you are, like I say, just technically hitting 1 or 2 buttons and letting the automated systems take care of everything else. And if you've got a backup, I mean, I've never used BlogVault, but I'm assuming that the backup process, if you had to reinstate a backup, is probably several minutes, depending upon how big a site it is. If you've got a massive e-commerce site with a massive database and tens of thousands of products, it's a different thing. But yeah, I mean, that's something that I think, I don't know if you've ever created content on your system there, but I think that would definitely be something that would be interesting for people moving forward. And I know you enjoy creating content, in whatever format it is, even if it's just a sort of over-the-shoulder look at how things are done. I think something like that could ultimately be incredibly valuable for people that are new to starting out, because I think a lot of people would probably look at different aspects of a care plan, a maintenance plan, as being something that takes up a lot of your time and effort. And I think this kind of comes down to, if your care maintenance plans, whatever you kind of call them, are predominantly backups, updates, and those kinds of things, it's very easy to automate those processes. But do you do any kind of design updates or content updates as part of your maintenance plans, the higher plans maybe, or is that something totally separate to your maintenance plans?
Yeah, I'll say, you talked about kind of the doing content. I will say I learned a ton of care plan strategy from Christina Romero. She runs WP Care Market. She has all kinds of training programs on care plans, and fantastic training. She does a really good job. So if you're really looking to get in deep with that, I would certainly go check that out. So on my medium tier plan, I offer what I call 3 30-minute tasks per month. So it's essentially, I limit that 30-minute task so they can't ask me to do something like build a new custom post type in all these fields and these new templates, right? That I couldn't do that in 30 minutes or less, so that's kind of out of the scope. But if it's, swap out this picture, change this phone number, those little things, as long as it's something that's generally going to take 30 minutes or less, they get 3 of those a month. That's where I would say I could go back and look at the numbers, but I would say about half of my customers are on that plan because they do need to do things here and there, and they don't want to go do them themselves. So they pay me for that time. But I would say of the half of the clients that are on those, maybe 4 actually ask for anything. It's there if they need it, and I'll be happy to do it. And I am a little bit more proactive with those clients. Like if things change and something needs to be updated, I'll proactively do a little bit more for them. But for the most part, they don't ask for a whole lot. And a lot of the times when they do request something, it's upload this PDF and post it or whatever. And it's a 3-minute task for me to do. So I don't mind doing that one bit. And I think it's peace of mind for them that they know they don't have to log into their website and do anything. They can just shoot me an email and it's taken care of. So there could be a little less profit in that plan because my time's involved, and that's the most expensive thing in my agency is my time. But for the most part, I just haven't run into a problem with clients that abuse that or ask too much. And if it is something that's over 30 minutes, I just say, hey, this is a bigger task than the care plan would cover, so I can put together a quote for you and we can go from there. And generally they're fine with that.
I think that's the thing. The key here is flexibility. It's one of the things I've kind of talked about before. I mean, when I sort of introduced my original contract from working with clients, it was all about locking down the project. And people would sort of look at that document, which is like 12 pages long for a contract with full of legal jargon and stuff, and they would just look at it and go, Jesus, and it's like, and you would lose clients or potential clients at that point. So I kind of flipped that entire thing on its head, and I based it on the killer contract, which if you've never seen it, that's definitely worth looking at because it's an interesting way of approaching things. And by flipping it around and basically saying, this is what you've agreed to, this is the price that we've agreed upon. But at any point during the process, you can change your mind on a simple thing. You can add extra things in. You can completely flip the entire project on its head. But just bear in mind that if you want to add extra features or you want to make major changes, you will be having a separate proposal with a separate price on it in addition to what we've agreed upon because you've changed things. There may be a new contract involved. But what it does is it kind of gives people the peace of mind that if they want to change something, they can do that. And I think that's a similar kind of approach to what you've got there. Most people will never change their mind. Most people will never sort of require those updates. And if you've got 50 or 100 clients all on the maintenance plan, they've all got that particular plan, well, let's be honest about it. If you had all of those coming back to you for the work, you could probably outsource that for less money than it would take you to do it. Do you know what I mean? So there's ways around that. And like I say, I think a lot of people probably will never even take up on it, but they'll pay for it because they think it gives them peace of mind thinking, if I need an update, I don't have to worry about it. And it's kind of included in my maintenance plan. It's like insurance at the end of the day. Nobody wants to use it, but we take it out because we think we need to. And I think that's the thing. So I66 Info has asked one question, which is, I believe that I mentioned the care maintenance plan manual product you sell. Do you have a link for that? I think the easiest thing to do, if I'm not wrong, is to just do a search for the website owner's manual. Would I be right?
Yeah, that's fine. You can go to theadminbar.com/WOM, as in website owner's manual. That'll take you directly to it. Or if you just go to our homepage, there's a big button that says recurring revenue, make more money, something like that. A big yellow button at the top. You'll find it. And you can check it out there. I'm sure somebody can drop a link in the chat too.
Is this in your newly redesigned website, possibly?
It is.
So if you want to go to theadminbar.com, like Kyle says, and you can see that we've got the options inside there. You can go to products if you want, which is probably the easiest way of doing it. And inside there, you've got your website owner's manual, which you can grab. And I can highly recommend it. It is an incredibly simple set of documents that allow you to very quickly and easily potentially convert clients in or potential clients into paying clients and get them onto your care plans, which is definitely worth taking a look at. So just check that out. That's theadminbar.com, and like I say, /WOM if you want to get direct access to it. So hopefully that's answered the question. So thanks for that, Kyle. I'm flicking buttons all over the bloody place.
Thanks for showing it off.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, we'll take a look at your spanky new website as we go through anyway. So we've kind of talked about your care plans and things. So the next thing I want to kind of do is, we talked about, like, right back at the beginning, you were charging like $300 for the first website. And obviously, I'm assuming you're probably charging considerably more. Not going to ask figures because I don't think it's really relevant because everything is different wherever you are in the world. But how over time, and probably more so over the last couple of years, how have you found increasing your prices has kind of gone down with new potential clients? And if you've had kind of no real rejection on that, what do you think are the sort of key reasons why people are happy to keep paying higher ticket prices for the work that you're kind of doing? What have you found the biggest or the easiest way of making that sort of sell to potential clients?
What I think is really interesting, I wrote a few things down here. I'm not much of a preparer, but I did write a few things down for these questions. But I think this is the most amazing thing. So I run a little like mastermind type groups. There's about 40 people involved, web designers, web agencies, WordPress people. And I think the most amazing thing is the biggest difference between the people charging $1,000 or $5,000, let's say. I'm just pulling numbers out of a hat. I think this probably scales up pretty far, maybe not $100,000, but the biggest difference is just the number they put there on their proposal. The work's not a whole lot different. The quality's not a whole lot different. The process isn't a whole lot different. The outcome's not a whole lot different. It's literally just the number they tell the client and the confidence they have when they say that number. If you say $5,000, that'll be $5,000 for the website, and you say it really unsure of yourself, and you're like, well, but maybe we could do it cheaper and stuff. Oh, clients can just feel all that, But the people that say, yep, not a problem, we can handle that, it's $5,000, here's where you give us the deposit, we can get started next week, I think that is honestly, it seems stupid and it's almost a silly thing to say, but one of the biggest differences is just asking for that amount. That's it. And I really think it comes down to people having confidence to ask those numbers. Whatever that next number is for you. Like I said, maybe not if you're charging 1,000, you start charging 100,000. But I think that is a huge difference. I don't think as many people are shopping web developers as we think there are. I think a lot of people, by the time they've met with you and talked with you and explained their project and all that, they're not doing that with 6 or 7 people most of the time, unless their company requires them to get multiple quotes and stuff. Small businesses, they do not have time to shop around to a million different people. So they're probably going to trust what you say. Now, that doesn't mean you should screw people over. I definitely wouldn't advocate for that. You need to charge a fair price for doing good work. But chances are they're probably not shopping that around anyways. And I think in our mind, we think, oh, they're never going to go for this. And really all the times I've felt that and thought, they're never going to go for this amount, but I'm going to put it out there anyways. They go for it. And I'm like, okay, well, that was easy. And then the next time I try a little bit more and I try a little bit more. And obviously I'm getting better at the work I do. Every time I do a new project, I'm learning something new. I'm getting more efficient, doing a better job. But for the most part, it's really been just changing the number I put on the invoice, which is pretty amazing. But there are a few other things that I wanted to make sure I mentioned. One is, you mentioned me creating content. I do love to create content. I think content is one of the best ways for you to show your prospects the value you bring. So I have tons of blogs on my agency website. Some are not that great. Probably none of them are that great. However, I don't think my prospects are going through and reading those blogs from start to finish. I find that very few of them are. However, when conversations come up, when they ask about this, ask about that, well, I've wrote blog posts on all these topics. So I can just say, hey, I've answered all this over here. Here's a link to it. Go pull it up, go through it. And I think them seeing that you've spent that time to write all that content or create those videos or record those audio pieces or whatever the type of content creation you like to do is, I think that instills so much confidence. So I know that I have blog posts on my website that have earned me tens of thousands, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over time, just writing this content that answers questions that my customers have, because they just see, well, Mike Killen had the quote one time, like he was talking about writing a 10,000 word blog post or something. He said, only an expert or a crazy person would do this, right? And I think that is a good outlook on it. Like, you're not going to write all that content or create all these videos or whatever it may be if you don't know what you're talking about. So I think that instills a lot of confidence with clients. So that's been a huge one for me. I think content creation, it also helps generate leads. A lot of the clients that I get are people that asked something in Google, found my website. Sometimes it's tutorials or whatever it may be, and they contact me because they don't want to do it, and I obviously know how to do it, or I wouldn't have wrote a big old blog post about it. So that's been probably my biggest lead generation as well. So content is a huge one. The other one that I would say is not being afraid to ask for the work. So, a lot of people who are in the web industry, I'm trying to say this as politely as possible, but a lot of us sit behind a computer and work in a dark basement, which many of us do. I wish I had a dark basement. I got too much light in this room. But we do that because we're not necessarily people. We rather work with a computer. We understand how a computer works, and people are a little bit more complicated, right? So I think just by nature, as a generalization, a lot of web people are like that. So I think a lot of people have the tendency to sit back and wait for work to come to them. And some work will come to you that way, but it's a lot harder to predict if you're just being passive and letting the game come to you. If you go out there and hustle for business, it's not that hard to find customers if you're willing to just go out there and be a human being. I'm not saying go spam people, but go start conversations, go to networking meetings, get involved in the community, get involved with a nonprofit. The nonprofit that I did the Wix work for was how I got several of my first jobs. I started volunteering up there long before I was doing web stuff, but I got to know all the people on the board of the nonprofit. Well, all the people on the board of the nonprofit are all the business owners in town, right? So I already had a relationship with all these people. So you can't underestimate a little bit of hustle, how much that can do for you. And recently I had a project that I was really interested in rebuilding these people's website. And I usually don't do spec work, but I was very interested in getting this job. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to mock up what I would do for their website instead of what they have now. So I spent a few hours in XD and mocked up a new homepage design and kind of explained why I would make these decisions. And I thought about it for a few minutes and I sent it to them. And they were super impressed and ended up hiring me to do that job. They would have never reached out to me and hired me to do that. And I wouldn't necessarily do that for every project, but it was kind of one of those dream projects I wanted. So I was happy to go out there and put in a little work to get that job. So those were a few of the things I wrote down that I think are pretty important in trying to build that reputation and be able to earn more because you're providing more,
Yeah, I think that's a really good sort of way of looking at things. I mean, generally I wouldn't sort of recommend taking the time and effort to redesign someone's site and then send it out to them in the hope that they'll come back. But if I know the people that you're talking about and the company you're talking about, you already had a relationship with that company, and having that is already giving you a kind of foot in the door. If you've got a passion for what they do and you like those people and you can see where their current website is letting them down and potentially losing sales, losing business or whatever, and you think, well, actually it's worthwhile me spending a half a day because I would love to work with these people. I think I can do better than what they currently have, and I think I can improve their bottom line, their profitability, their sales, whatever it is that these kind of the website is intended to do. Then sometimes that work is definitely worth being involved in. And to go back to your content creation, then one of the things that I can kind of agree with there is I wrote a blog article years and years ago about, it was a simple question, do you actually need a designer, a web designer kind of thing? And just kind of looked at it from the point of view of people that don't actually use web designers. Does it actually cost them more money long term? I wrote the article, put it up on there, and thought nothing more of it. And a phone call the one day, and we were based in sort of like a little town in South Wales, and got a phone call from a company in London, the capital of the UK, saying, I read your article and pretty much everything you wrote in there has resonated with the experience that I've had working with the web design company. Can you take over the website and can you rebuild it for me? And how much will it cost and how quick can you do it? And it was like, well, I didn't have to sell that. I literally spent probably 45 minutes to an hour writing that article because it was something I kind of thought, there's actually some merit in what I'm saying here. And it generated a sale for a couple of £1,000. And this is going back like probably 10 years ago. I still work with that client. I still have their website. So you kind of don't underestimate that content creation by putting those things out there for free. And I know there's a book that Kyle bought a while back when this came out, and I picked up a copy of this, and it's one I would recommend if you are looking to get in any kind of content creation, whether that's written content or you want to create a sort of like a podcast, or you want to create YouTube videos, whatever kind of method you want. I'd highly recommend picking up The Content Fortress by Martin Hunchback, and I can never think of
Lindsay,
that's it, yeah. So I would recommend checking that out. And if you want a sort of book that's very, very similar, take a look at They Ask You Answer, which is a very similar concept, which is basically how you can pre-qualify your potential customers by writing content that is informative and useful. And sometimes that means pointing out things that means that that particular person or the product that you sell or the service you sell isn't actually a good fit or isn't what they want. So you kind of reduce those pointless conversations and pointless quotes and those kinds of things, and you kind of pre-qualify the potential buyer by creating content that answers questions and helps them out and helps them make a decision as to whether what they're looking for is actually what they need and whether you provide it. So it's a very, very important kind of thing, and I think it's underestimated by a lot of people, is creating some form of informational, educational content that can help answer questions. Because what it does is, as you said, it kind of sets you up as a thought leader, sets you up as an expert in your particular industry. And that can be very attractive to potential customers. And when you've got those kind of already warm leads being generated, you can then ultimately ask for that higher ticket price because they already look at you as being someone that knows what you're doing. They want to work with you because they can see the kind of experience you have, the knowledge you have. And like you said, Kyle, that's worked for you, where you've created blog content, where you've probably created YouTube content, where you've got the admin bar. You know, you were showing your expertise in various different areas, and that's attractive to potential customers. And I know that I get emails sort of every week. People want me to consult with them on projects. They want me to, how much would I charge to do a project, and those kinds of things. I mean, ultimately at the moment, I'm not working with new clients. But if I was still working with clients, it's a really good way of getting potentially high ticket customers and clients because they already want to work with you because they know that you know what you're talking about, and you can probably answer the problem that they have. So don't underestimate that content creation process, I think, is kind of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you want to talk about changing the dynamic of a relationship from the get-go. If I know now if my phone rings and it's a local phone number and I answer it and somebody says, "Hi, I found your number on Google. I'm looking for a website developer." I know this is not going to be a good lead. I almost know that it's not going to be a good lead. But when somebody replies, into a form or something on my website and says, "Hey, I was looking for X. I found your blog," the entire conversation is different because I don't have to do anything at that point to sell myself. They've already been sold on me through content that I wrote a year, 2 years, 3 years ago, whatever it may be. They've already been sold on me through that, and I got to do that one-to-many instead of one-to-one on the phone with the local yokel here in town. So I do think it's a huge difference in like that shift. And then you talk about the credibility you build up. Everybody watching this right now, I can promise you, to a person, would have no problem with you building a website for them, right? Because they've watched you make 1 million YouTube videos on how to build a website. They have 100% confidence that you could build a website for them, right? And it's just because you've created a bunch of content on it. You've shown them how to do 1 million different things, so they trust that you could handle it for them. If they got on a sales call with you, if you were selling websites to new clients, you would have to do nothing to prove to them that you know what you're doing. You've already done all that, right? Yeah. So it does completely change the dynamic when you have some kind of content out there to, kind of sell yourself, so you don't have to do it in pitch meetings with pitch decks and all those kinds of things. There's just no need for it, Exactly.
And I think that's the kind of takeaway from this, is that if you are either in the industry right now or you're looking to get into it, it's very easy to kind of just get blinkers on and think, what I need to do is find new clients, build websites, build up my portfolio, and rinse and repeat over and over again. And the problem with that is, like we said at the beginning, that's where you'll be charging that lower ticket item because you are getting those calls because you've got no proven track record. You don't have that portfolio or body of work. You're not, even if you do, chances are they're not going to look at you as an expert because, as Kyle's already said, when you have that phone call, you are just another web design company that they contact. You might be the first one, you might be the third one, you might be the last one. But what they're looking for, in a lot of cases, is for you to convince them that they should give you the money. Whereas, like you say, if you are already being considered as being someone that's an expert in your market, in your niche, in whatever it is, whether you sort of like you niche down to a specific type of web design or whatever, that, as Kyle's already said, changes the dynamic dramatically, because then they're kind of basically selling themselves to you, because they already know you're the person they want to work with. And unless the price is way out of what their budget is, at which point, you're probably not going to work with them anyway, you've pretty much got that job. There's a really slim chance that you completely nutty balls that up and you alienate that potential client, because they already want to work with you. That's why you're the person they've contacted. So if you are new in the industry, if you are sort of like looking at ways in which you can separate yourself from other design companies in your area or in your niche, one of the key things I would say is don't underestimate creating content in whatever format you're comfortable with. Even if you sort of like you skeleton write it and you outsource it to a copywriter to create a more convincing end article, which you can do in lots of different ways. But as long as the idea or ideas are yours, so at least when people talk to you, they can feel confident that you actually know what you're talking about based upon what's written out there. It can be incredibly invaluable. So I would recommend taking a look at the Content Fortress. I've got no link to this whatsoever, other than I bought it based upon Kyle showing a photograph of it when he bought it when it first came out. So it's worth checking out, because I think it might open your eyes from a web designer's point of view, because that's what the Content Fortress is about. They have a web design company, and this is how they've used these techniques to improve their bottom line, to improve the amount of money they charge, and improve the types of clients that they work with.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's a really fantastic book. I second that. And you mentioned They Ask You Answer. Martin and Lindsay are big fans of They Ask You Answer, the book. In fact, the author of that wrote the foreword for their book, Content Fortress, so they go really well together. And there is a nice chapter in Content Fortress all about the website owner's manual too.
Well, what can we say? You can't get a better endorsement than that. So,
I know, right?
Right, we've got a couple of questions I want to go through. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Like I say, I'm conscious of the time. I don't want to keep you all day where you are. So I'm going to go through a couple of questions that have been asked for different kind of things. So first of all, Lakshan is asking, do you host your clients on Cloudways or... Hang on, let me rephrase that. Do you host your client sites on your Cloudways account, or do you have separate accounts for their hosting? Do you kind of separate those out?
So for 99% of my clients, they're on my hosting account. They don't want to deal with all that kind of stuff. So I just put them on my account. I manage all that for them. I do have a few clients who... I'm pretty open and honest with my clients. Kind of what you see is what you get with me. But, I tell them, I don't work 24/7. So if the website goes down at midnight, I'm asleep. I'm not going to know it until I wake up. And if that's a huge issue for you, if the website has to be up 24/7, maybe you need to have direct access to somebody who can be there 24/7 directly with the host. Most of the clients I work with have no problem with that. I respond as quick as I can. If it's after hours or something and I see a website's down, I come fix it. I have very few problems with websites being down, so I'm just pretty open with them about that. I do have a few clients who run SaaS companies. They have to have their website working 24/7, so they have a direct account that I'm included in. So then that way, if I'm unavailable, they can go directly to the host for support if I'm unavailable. But they typically will just contact me anyways, but at least they have that option in case I'm on vacation or asleep or hit by a bus.
I think it's kind of the same as what I do is when a sort of a new client comes on board, or when a new client used to come on board, when I did this, if they wanted their own hosting, it was a case of that's fine. It's entirely up to you. I would recommend you come with me, because it means that you've got one point of contact for your website. You've got one point of contact for your hosting, for your domain registrations and all those kinds of things, as opposed to if there's a technical problem and you don't know what you're talking about with the hosting company, you're going to come to me, you're going to ask me, and then you're going to want me to liaise with those, and chances are they won't deal with you because you're not the account holder, and it makes the whole process more convoluted. And I think most clients just want an easy life. They just want, okay, I've got a website. If there's anything to do with my website, I ring Kyle. Simple as that. And I think that's what people want. So generally, I would say it makes life easier for you and the client if they're all on the same server. Plus the fact that as long as you've got kind of some kind of uptime monitoring on at least one website on there. If something goes offline and you get notified, if it's a server-based problem, all of your sites are in your same account on the same server, which means it makes it easier then to find out, is it a hosting issue, is it a an update issue, whatever it is, and it makes your life easier. And as Kyle said, chances are, if you get notified at 11 o'clock on a Monday night, you're going to go on there and make sure everything's working because you want everything to be back up and running, but it's one location to deal with all those kinds of things. So I would generally say that that's the better way of going about it. Plus, you can charge them for the privilege of being on your shared hosting plans. There's benefits to it.
Absolutely.
So the next one is Malice. You have a 24-month commitment for your plans. How are you handling those clients who break that said term? So basically, how do you handle people that want to default on that 24-month period?
Yeah, so on my care plans, I don't have any commitment. It's all month to month, and I use that as my marketing. So I say, it's month to month. You can try it out if you don't like me. If you decide you don't like the service, if you decide you don't like the way I look, no big deal. Let me know. We'll get you all offboarded, and you can go on your way. I think customers are very leery about signing a long contract on something they might not fully understand or when they're just getting to know you. So I just don't include any kind of contract on my care plans. I've never had any issue from that, and I think clients appreciate it. Now, I do have on my website some subscription-based websites, so you pay a small monthly fee for a website, and those are 24-month contracts. I have terms inside my contract that stipulate they have to pay the 24 months, or else I sue the hell out of them because it's America, damn it. But it's not really come to that. And to be honest, if most of the time people default on something like that, it's because they've gone out of business or whatever it may be. It's part of the risk, I'm assuming. So I didn't do those subscription-based websites except for starting this year, only because I can afford to assume that risk. So, it's kind of depends on what your situation is.
Yeah, exactly. I think you've got to look at your market, where you are, where you're based, and what that will kind of sustain. And just be careful with those kinds of things. Like, say, signing people up, you're always going to get a percentage of people that will default for whatever reason, like, say, if they've got a business, whatever. So it's just making sure that you cover yourself and be realistic about what can happen. And if you want to sort of go down that potential for suing or whatever it is, you just got to be sensible, I think, with these kinds of things. You've got to look at what's going to work best in your particular market and sector. Okay, so what else do we have? Fancy design. How do you update the website without checking the websites? This is kind of going back to your care plan where you've got everything kind of on, what's it called, Blog Vault. Or Vault Blog. Yeah. So how do you kind of go about that?
So Blog Vault has regression testing built in. So essentially, if you went on there and hit update on the website, it has a little checkbox. Do you want to do visual regression testing? I leave that defaulted to checked. Essentially, what it does is takes a screenshot before it does the updates, then it does a screenshot afterwards. It overlays those two on top of each other, and if there's discrepancies between them, it highlights those little areas in pink, and then will give you a percentage of how much discrepancy there is between the two. Now, that doesn't solve for every error that could be possible. It solves the white screen of death error. If I update a site and it goes to a white screen, well, the entire website looks different, so I would be notified. There are little things here or there that might change. A couple ways I help that process is, one, I try to use the same stack on every website as much as possible. I did go through a huge overhaul recently, so I do have a bunch of websites that are on Elementor, and those are a whole different ballgame. But for the most part, most of my sites now are on GeneratePress, GenerateBlocks, and a few other plugins that I use on everything. I'm really intimately familiar with all those plugins. I purposefully don't put my websites on, not all of my websites on Blog Vault, and I'm in those websites every day and doing those plugin updates every time I see them, so I know what's happening with them. So chances are, before I'm in Blog Vault hitting update all, I've already done these updates on several websites and didn't have any issues. So for the most part, I'm fairly trusting of it. I do spot checks here and there, but honestly, if you keep the plugin stack pretty similar across the board, and you have some ways of testing on your own stuff first, I just really hadn't run into any issues. But it depends on the software you're using. If you're updating 100 websites to Elementor version 3 back in the day, then you probably had a completely different experience than what I'm explaining right now.
And you're probably a lot grayer. Yeah, I think that's a good point actually, and it's one thing that sort of was popped up in a comment on the Facebook group earlier on today, which is when you kind of move away and you go to simpler stacks like Generate Press and Generate Blocks, or Cadence, those kinds of things, where you're not necessarily using some of those heavyweight plugins that can cause problems like WooCommerce and so on. It does mean that when there's updates, it is easier, but the flip side of that means that you're not so reliant upon things like WP Rocket and all these optimization tools to try to get those sites up to the speed that you want. Whereas inherently, using something like Generate Press and Generate Blocks, they're already fast. You're already in the 90s unless you're doing something really wrong, uploading massive files or pages that are sort of like screens and screens long. So I think sort of choosing the right tech stack or stacks, keeping things as simple as possible, those do allow you to update things without that fear of God being placed into you every time there's an update, of which there are many, as we know, when it comes to WordPress. There's an update almost every day. But if you are running 4 or 5 plugins and a simple, straightforward theme, that's going to give you a bit more peace of mind, and probably mean that your maintenance updates and your care plans and those kinds of things, they do run just considerably smoother, which, like we say, ultimately then helps you become more profitable, because that's just money for, well, technically not doing a hell of a lot other than giving peace of mind to your clients. So,
I interviewed Tom, the developer of Generate Press, Generate Blocks, a while back, and that's one of the things he said. He's like, I told him, I think some people don't get into Generate Press, Generate Blocks because it doesn't move and update as fast as other plugins. They're not adding features constantly. And he just asked, he's like, do you like doing plugin updates all the time? Do you like, having to learn new things and the potential of your site breaking? And I'm like, well, no, I really don't like that, so it's changed my perception a little bit. The slower moving thing, while maybe I can't do all the fancy, crazy things I might be able to do with another system, I have almost complete confidence that I can hit update and nothing's going to break, which from a business standpoint is a lot better of a solution than having a bunch of fancy things.
Absolutely. I'm one, after you sort of started exploring the virtues of Generate Press and Generate Blocks, I kind of went back and took a look, because I bought Generate Blocks when it first came out, wasn't particularly impressed with it, but then again, I hated Gutenberg at the time. And the theme always seemed a little bit bare bones in comparison to like Ocean WP and Astra and things like that. But kind of after you put a couple of comments up on the admin bar, and you sort of did a couple of videos of how you were using it, it kind of piqued my interest, and I went back and watched a couple of their videos, and a couple of the videos of, I can't think of the guy's name now, but there's a lot of videos on Generate Press, and it kind of got me interested in how it all works. And I think David McCann did a really good coverage on this, where he took a look at stackable Generate Blocks and Cadence blocks, and kind of summed it up in a really simple fashion. If you want something that gives you all the building blocks, like Lego, for example, Generate Blocks is probably for you, because it gives you all the blocks without the instructions, but it gives you the opportunity to build whatever you want pretty much within reason. Where you've got Cadence, that's more a case of that's all the different bits are already basically made for you, and you just go, I want an accordion, you click the accordion. I want to put tabs in, you click that to put it in. So those are things that are already built for you, whereas Stackable was more a case of, this is kind of like a halfway house. It gives you the building blocks to start off with, and it gives you some of the predefined styles, but you can kind of do mostly what both of those allow you to do. And I kind of think that's the thing, is that when you look at a tool like Generate Blocks paired with Generate Press, it does kind of look a little bit bare bones and limited. There's 5 or 6 different sort of widgets, modules, blocks, whatever you call them, and that pretty much is it. But hidden inside those is an awful lot of power. And with the 1.5 update, that brought with it, custom loop builder, and this is inside the free plugin, custom loop builder, most of the querying that you would want. There's a couple of extra things that are in the pro blocks when that's actually released. But for a lot of use cases, you can do pretty much everything you want to create complex listing websites, right the way to a simple sort of 2 or 3 page sales website. And you start off with a solid platform that doesn't update all the time and cause problems, and you can get into the 90s on Google page speed with really no effort whatsoever. It is an impressive set of tools that look deceptively simple, I think is probably the easiest way. Maybe that should be their strapline. Generate Press and Generate Blocks, deceptively simple. I'll trademark that later.
You've sold me on it right now.
You sold me on it, that's the problem.
Okay, well, good. I'm going to tell Tom that I sold you on it. When you send 1 million people his way, I'm going to let him know that was via Kyle.
Yep. You're not getting a percentage, but thank you anyway. Okay, so this is an interesting one because I've got the way that I do it. I'm gonna say that you probably do the same thing, but Lack's asking, how do you charge when you're hosting sites on your account? Not the same cost of the hosting plan. So how would you go about this? If you've got a, let's call it the reseller plan, which a lot of hosting companies provide, if you are using your reseller plan and you're selling space on there to a client, how do you go about billing them? Do you charge them what Cloudways, for example, would charge for a standard single hosting plan, or do you operate slightly differently?
So I don't do any hosting only type plans. I don't just host somebody's website. They're going to get the full care plan, the care and maintenance as part of it, or they don't get anything. I don't want to put any websites on my server that I know are not being maintained properly, or I'm not sure are being maintained properly. I think that's a risk for my servers and everything else on them. So unless I'm going to be doing the care and maintenance, I don't put those on my server. So it's hard for me to say exactly how I charge it because I'm not just charging for the hosting. The hosting is part of it, but all the other things I do with Blog Vault and manually are part of it too. However, if almost all my servers are on Cloudways. I use Cloudways, but I don't recommend them. So if anybody's like looking to switch, they're not my favorite company. It's just I'm already bought in. It brings me joy to say that. So they're on Cloudways. They're on Vultr high frequency servers. So most of them I think are $22 a month. I can pretty much stick anywhere from 5 to 15 websites on there, depending on the traffic of the website, how big the website is, the resources and all that. But even on the low end, let's say it's $22 a month for the server and I only have 5 websites on it. That's $4.40 a month, allocated for each client. It's really not very much money, and if I have 15 sites on a $22 server, that's $1.46. So I almost see the cost of the servers as inconsequential in the grand scheme of my care plan, only because I'm not just charging for hosting.
So basically what you're saying is part of the care plan is, and I think this is possibly what confuses some people, is that the care plan is more a case of this includes licenses, it includes hosting, domains as well, domain renewals, would that be included in there?
I have all my clients get their own domains just because it gets so messy.
So basically what you're doing is then you were taking domains out of it, but you were taking every other aspect of having a website maintained, updated, kept online, and all those kinds of things. That's part of your care plan. Everything they pay you every month that's everything. And like you say, because you pay in monthly, at any point, if they defaulted on payment, I'm assuming you could just literally suspend their account, and if they carry on, terminate their account kind of thing. So you get full control.
Sure enough.
You're holding all the cards.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm going to do 2 more questions and then we're going to call it an evening. So Pixter's asking, Kyle, do you use Gutenberg for your projects, or what do you prefer to build your websites? Well, I think we've probably already answered that, but if we'd like to sort of just reiterate.
Yep. Generate Press for the theme and Generate Blocks as the main builder, which is all Gutenberg blocks for pretty much everything. So there's a few scenarios when I can't get by with just those things, but I've really kind of decided I like that tool stack so much that I'm going to do the kind of websites I can do with those tools. So if it really is not a good fit for those tools, I'm kind of turning away the jobs at this point. So yeah, I'm using it on everything. I can build them faster, quicker, more stable, great scores, and I enjoy doing it. So that's what I use on everything.
Yeah, and like I say, I think this is kind of going back to what I said about niching down. It's like if you've got a tech stack that you're comfortable with and you enjoy work on the projects that fit that tech stack perfectly, then you can just basically go, well, that doesn't fit in, so that's not a project I want to work on, so I'm going to turn that one down. I'm going to stick to the kind of the niche that I've carved out with a tool set that I'm comfortable with. And like you say, it gives you that peace of mind then, knowing that when an update comes about, you don't have the stress and the hassle that goes with it, and you can predominantly automate the entire process, to make you as profitable as possible with regards to your maintenance and your care plans and your websites and those kinds of things. So pretty cool. Okay, so we got one more. This is from Cedric. How do you manage with a customer the boundaries between what is in the maintenance contract and what is outside of the contract?
So it is all spelled out inside of the contract, the actual contract, what that they sign, what all is included with it. For the most part, the maintenance side of it, the updating plugins, all those kinds of things, there's not really much to argue about. It's spelled out there. There's not a whole lot of gray area, so I don't really have problems. Where I could see there being some gray area is on like if you're doing content updates for them. So that's why I've limited it to 30-minute tasks, and even in that is subjective. What if it's 31 minutes? Is that out of bounds, or do you go ahead and do that? So it's a little subjective there. I've kind of whittled my clients down to the people I like working with, so I don't fight with them much on these things. Some of them might go several months without asking me for anything, and then ask me for something that's a little bit outside the bounds, and I just do it. So I really don't have too much pushback, but if it is something that's clearly out of line and it doesn't match, I just let them know, hey, this isn't included. And not just, hey, no, I can't do that, it's not included. It's, that's not included, here's what we can do. What is the solution? You got to provide the solution along with it. But I really don't have a whole lot of pushback on anything with that.
I think that's the thing. A business relationship is a relationship. At the end of the day, you can't go, oh, well, that was 30 minutes, cut off there. I'm not going to finish that off, or I'm going to bill you for it. The reality is, most of the time, we like our clients. We want them to do well. We want them to continue that relationship. And is it really worth jeopardizing that over the sake of maybe an extra 10 or 15 minutes when they're generally paying you $75 plus per month, and your overheads, like you say, are a couple of dollars for hosting, and other than that, there's not really much in the way of overheads. It is purely profit. So, sometimes you've got to kind of you set those boundaries, but you've got to be flexible. I think you've got to be realistic, and you want to maintain, you want that $75 every single month. So an extra 5 or 10 minutes of your time here and there once every blue moon is probably not really worth worrying about. So yeah, I would probably agree with you on that one. Okay, so we've got a couple of things that I want to sort of pull up. Lakshan said he's going to go and buy your website owner's manual right now, which is always good. So you've got a sale. So nice. My cut is 75%. Okay,
that's right. That's
right.
Hey,
plus taxes.
For transparency, I've tried many times to get Paul set up with an affiliate account. He won't do it. So
no, I'd rather you did the hard work. I'd rather money go to you. So one final thing I'm going to ask, because I'm curious about this myself. Do you use Figma, and how did you learn it? I'll answer it from my point of view. I've started using it probably around about the last month, 6 weeks, and I'm actually working on a course that hopefully will be out in the next couple of weeks, which is how to design in Figma, and then how to move that over to Elementor, how to move it over to GeneratePress and GenerateBlocks more than likely. And I've been asked several times now to take it over to Bricks as well. So I am going to be creating a course that will show you the entire process. But that's just me. Quick sales pitch there. So Kyle, do you use Figma, and how did you go about learning it to design sites?
So I've only recently started using Figma. I played with it for a while. I had a client give me a bunch of designs in Figma, so I had to kind of figure out how it worked. But I didn't really enjoy it that much. I worked in Adobe Illustrator every day for 15 years. So I know Adobe Illustrator like the back of my hand. So when it came to finding a UI design program, XD was just an easy transition. It was, it's almost the same setup as Illustrator, a lot of the shortcuts, it just felt at home. So I really used XD for quite a while. But here recently, I forget what happened. I don't know. I got a wild hair and wanted to start using Figma. I'm a nerd for learning all these tools. So I just started playing with Figma and I really enjoyed it. So the new admin bar website, I did all of that inside Figma. As far as learning it, there's such a huge difference between learning how to use Figma and learning how to design. It's not the same thing at all, right?
No.
Learning how to use Figma is like learning how the tools work, the auto layouts, the things like that. I learned all those things on their YouTube channel. There's tons of great tutorials. I binge watched a bunch of those and figured out how the tools work. I think a lot of the stuff with Figma is like learning a good workflow for working in Figma and learning how to use the components in in some kind of system that makes sense. Learning how to design is a whole different thing, right? So you could be really good at knowing how to use Figma, but not understand any design principles and probably have a really rough time. I didn't go to design school. I don't have any formal training in design. I'm obviously not the best designer, but I spent 15 years designing every day as my job. So I've just had a lot of practice learning how to make things look half decent. So that part of it, I'm not sure what to tell you on the how to learn design part.
I think you undersell yourself when it comes to the design side of things. I know that myself and Dave Foy were talking about this a couple of weeks back. I think you do a lot more high quality design than you give yourself credit for. So I think you're underselling your ability there. So let's just say that.
Well, even if I thought that, I wouldn't say it out loud, Paul.
That's what you said to me off camera. You said I'm the best designer I've ever seen. So
said, y'all shut up and listen. I got a thing or two to teach y'all.
Yeah, I'm sure you have as well, sir. Okay, so I'm going to wrap things up there. I want to say, first of all, thank you to everybody for taking the time out again this evening to get involved in the live stream, to join in, to ask your questions, to just become part of the community. I want to say a massive thank you to Kyle for taking the time out of his day to join us, to give us his insight, because let's be honest about it, what he's doing with the admin bar, what he's doing with his own Ogal web design business and so on, it's working. And I think we can all benefit from that information that he's happy to share with us. So thank you very much, Kyle. And quickly before we go off air, for anybody that missed at the beginning, how can people find out about you, what you do if they wanted to work with you? And how can they find out a little bit more about the admin bar?
Yeah, so I would say go to theadminbar.com, like the WordPress admin bar, but it's like a bar we hang out in for admins of websites. It's a play on words, but sometimes if you have to explain it, it's not great. Theadminbar.com, that's our community for WordPress web developers. You can go to that website and find our community, find all the content we've created, and all that is on there. Happy to have you join us and hang out there. And then if you want to check out my agency, it's Ogalweb, OGALWEB.com. You can go there and see my agency website if you have any needs for things like that. I imagine everybody watching this already has an agency, so they don't need me there, but you're welcome to go check that out anyways.
You never know. I mean, even Dave Foy is on there. So, I mean,
Look at that.
What a handsome fella. What a handsome fella. I wouldn't trust him, but a handsome fella.
I have milked that little quote I got for all it's worth.
Sometimes you have to. So, like I say, once again, thank you very much, Kyle, for joining in tonight, for sharing your knowledge, your skills, and your ability. I'm sure everybody has benefited from it. I know I have, because it's opened my eyes to a couple of things in how you actually operate, which is always interesting to find out. So, thank you very much for being part of this. Thank you, everybody else, for joining in this evening. Take care of yourselves, look after yourself, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks when I'm live streaming once again. So, take care and look after yourselves.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Pleasure.